Good evening and welcome to Talking Dogs on a Monday. We have a lot to discuss, a busy weekend in Irish Greyhound racing, both on and off the track. I'm joined as always by the exiled dub Tommy Lyons, who I'm sure will be absolutely joyous when his favourite dog, Ballinabola Ed, winning the RPGTV Open 600. And the man that was there asking all the questions on Saturday night was our man on the ground, Rob Catterson, the cat. It was a great night at Shelbourne Park on Saturday night. Everyone in buoyant form, lovely weather conditions. It was just a great night for greyhound racing.
It was, and the great thing, I suppose, the last number of Saturday nights, we've had nearly a full house. The restaurant has been buzzing. I know that the Saturday before it was a huge, brilliant atmosphere, and that seems to be the trend, going forward, which obviously is great all around. But yes, Saturday night we were all wondering what Ballinabola Ed was going to do. He'd been foot perfect the previous 2 weeks. A few people had their doubts, and I suppose after about 5 yards, those doubts came to fruition. And I'll be honest, I was in the infield and I thought he was in bother.
Yeah. I can only imagine. Tommy was sharpening his knives after about 3 yards, but in the end, Tommy, class prevailed. This is a race that will live long in the memory. It's not the way we thought we'd remember it. He was 1 to 3. I thought 1 to 3 was perfectly fair price, but he showed his class. But again, just one or two of those little things that have gotten the trouble in the past, the missed kick, and then edging in on the corner, taking the bump as a result. Now, as it transpired, I believe he did charge the boxes. I didn't see it, but the 600, you don't really have a chance because you're trying to race through those dogs' names before the actual hare gets there. You don't want to be talking while the hare opens the boxes, shall we say? So
Yeah.
I never spotted it, but I was told that Miller's Bryce, who did take a flyer and played such a big part in the race, was eager to get out, shall we say, and he was noisy in the boxes. I think Ballinabola Ed missed the kick, but in the end, his class did prevail. But it was some cracking final.
I was like you go on as if I don't like the dog. I do like the dog. He's a rogue, but he's after letting me down a few times along the way. And that performance the other night, while it was absolutely extraordinary, it's also reminds you why he'll get knocked out in a derby, or he can get knocked out in a derby, or has done in the past, or may do in the future. Who knows? Like if he's on the form, like if he brings that type of form to the derby, he can go and win a derby because he's that good. But like, would you get away with that in a derby final against 6 550 dogs? Against
No,
five other,
no, but the
probably
question is,
not.
if he did that run in the quarterfinals, he might get away with it. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
like, there's
yeah.
no guarantee it'll always be in the final, or there's another night in the
Oh no, no,
final he
no.
could
I'm
pig
not
out
talking
and
about derby final. I'm not talking about any heat along the way. Like obviously the first and second round heat you'd imagine will be a little bit weaker. But once you start getting third round, quarter final, semi final, the room for error. The quality dogs in the country right now is absolutely phenomenal, and we're seeing it all around the country in all the tracks, the clocks that they're doing. There's a phenomenal level, and he's as good as any of them.
yeah.
He is at raw pace. He's as good as any of them. And it was a fantastic performance. I actually thought it was interesting. I thought it was interesting what Pat Buckley said when he was interviewed by Rob afterwards. He was saying that he felt that he had left the dog a bit fresh and that was his fault and whatever. But like I suspect that's the only way to have that dog is try your best to have him as fresh as he can be, because it's been in the longer competitions, the 5 and 6 round competitions, where it's kind of the wheels will come off with one mistake or one bad performance or one just one subpar
Yeah,
effort.
I think mistake is the right term rather than bad performances, because in Toaster when he got knocked out, like, he did plenty right after the mistake, but it was just the mistake that sort of cost him, because he ran an unbelievable race to get involved, and he was just crowded out at the crucial point. The same in Shelbourne Park when he got knocked out of the derby. He was desperately unlucky. Like, a dog was sort of cannoned off the inside and gave him just broadsided him, and he was left with no sort of option for that. I think he is the engine to go through a big competition. I think the whole freshness idea, and Emma touched on it yesterday on RPGTV, Robert, was that the fact that this was 600 yards, you don't want to be given dogs like Ballinabola Ed too many runs over 600 yards in a row. And, you know, like, especially a dog that's getting loose like Ballinabola Ed, like, the energy he's after using in the last 2 weeks would probably equate to 4 or 5 550-yard runs. And I suppose they didn't want to be overly galloping him before a final of a 600, a third week in a row. Yeah, it's something Pat has alluded to before. He said it about Ben's Teddy and the Kirby. He said he just left him too fresh, and he said he just went bananas in boxes, and he charged, and just completely left in traps. And yeah, it's a fine line. It's a fine line, but in the end, they got away with it.
Yeah, they did. And I suppose a big reason they got away with it, I suppose, on Saturday night is that he was so far clear of his opposition in terms of talent, and he could probably afford to make it a little bit of a mistake. Now, I'm a little bit between both of you when it comes to him, because I'm like Tommy. He's let me down a couple of times, and I don't tend easy to forgive dogs. But I thought the other night, he definitely, whatever they had about him, he put to bed, because whatever missing the break, he had to get his position at the first bend. He took a right bump off the second bend, and he could have easily thrown in the towel, and some people have thought he'd done that in the past. But once he got his nose in front, he put the head down, and, I was thinking, let him bomb out and do a flashy run. And we were chatting beforehand, he might break the 32-second barrier. I prefer he did what he did, because you now see he can battle. And if he's going to go for an Irish Derby, he's going to have a couple of battles. And there'll be a night that he'll have to battle just to qualify. And I think what he did on Saturday night will stand to him.
Yeah. Tommy, is there a case to be made that he is probably matured that little bit? Like, he's foot perfect in his 3 starts to date this year. Prior to the final the other evening, things didn't happen for him in the final. Again, missed a kick, but really had to race, had to dig in. And even then, when he got to the front, you could see Milridge Bryce was readying himself for another challenge off the final turn. And Milridge Bryce, while he'd been third in the previous 2 rounds, finding himself in behind dogs, he did finish very strongly in those 2 previous outings. So we know he's exceptionally strong. And for Ballinabola Ed to dig in and really sort of drive to the line was a sign of a mature, stronger greyhound, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps. But I like the dog. I actually really do, because I like him to have a bit of a quirk about them, because there's a bit of character, and you just don't know what you're going to get. There's always an element of surprise. But from a punting point of view, and I think that's where Rob is coming from as well, the same kind of angle as I am. From a punting point of view, I've had my fingers burnt. So the price that they'll have him for the Irish Derby likely it will be short enough that I won't want to take it. And not that I wouldn't like to see him win it, or wouldn't expect that he could win it. He certainly can, because of his ability. But I'd just be put off. Maybe he is more mature, but I just want to see more. Like, worried to run next week after that performance. No, he won't. I'm certain of that. He won't. Probably give him a break after saying what he said about being for the freshness and the whole lot. Worried to run next week, I'd be interested to see how he'd run. Worried to drop back to 550 next week in Shelbourne Park for an open 550. I wouldn't know where I stood with him, what he might do. And that's not a slight on the dog. If you're a punter, you have to, you kind of always have to be wary. And as I said last week, as I was advised by a professional punter many moons ago, always go with the negative, err on the side of the negative, because that's what will save you money long term.
Yeah.
I would just, like, it sounds like I'm running the dog down. I really enjoyed the performance the other night. I thought it was absolutely fabulous. And Pat actually in the interview with Rob afterwards was keen to say that nobody can kind of run the dog down now after that. I hope that's not what it's been picked up as I'm trying to do. I'm not. I actually love watching them because of the element of uncertainty, and I know that the ability is there overall. But like, I'm still going to, until I learn more, I'm still going to err on the side of, do you know what? I've put him up in the past as, say, get him in the book and have him in the book, but you might have to look elsewhere as you go along. And then next thing, he's knocked out. He was, what price was he? 7-4 for both derbies at the time he was knocked out at quarter-final stage. He was something extremely short anyway. So, I mean, that's fairly getting
that goes to highlight his quality, and the fact that he's such a star in those early rounds. Yeah. And here we are, like, we're talking about a dog as if, he's a 1-2 merchant. Like, that was his 18th win from 27 starts the other night. You know what I mean? It's pretty phenomenal. We have to mention Brendan Murphy. Like, this is an extra special, victory for Brendan, the owner. Not only did he breed the dog, Ballinabola Ed, but I know, I have it from the horse's mouth. He's turned down, now I mean, monstrous bids for this greyhound, like eye-watering stuff. And, it's fully justified, and you can see why Brendan did. I don't know Brendan's circumstances, but he's clearly not short of a few bob. And when could you get another dog like Ballinabola Edge? You could be waiting all your life, especially one that you breed yourself. So I think he deserves a special mention for, firstly, sort of turning down the offers, and on a very special occasion, getting over the line with the dog that, well, is without question the best he's ever had. I got a phone call on Saturday night asking me would I fancy coming down to Ballinabola on Sunday evening. If I had, I dare say I wouldn't be up this morning for this podcast to record. We record at 9:30 in the morning. Could you imagine the shape I'd be in if I'd gone down to Ballinabola on Saturday night?
We're used to it.
Yeah.
I see actually he has a repeat litter to Confident Rankin actually.
Yeah, he does.
I just see five of them they're all 2022s, but the five of them registered. And there's a Burgess Books there. Only one of them has raced so far. But
I was down in Pat
like,
Buckley's. I was actually down in Pat Buckley's recently, and he just pointed and said, "That's a brother, full brother to Ballinabola Ed." He says he'll be good, and that was enough. All right.
And he
look,
what.
Go ahead there, Rob.
Go on, Tommy. Yeah, just
no,
what Pat was saying with regard to obviously keeping him fresh. Like, not that he's a difficult dog to train, but he says he's a difficult dog to keep his mind right. Like, he obviously trialed him in Limerick, and he gave him that one-off run in Limerick. I'd say he's trying to just, keep him not on edge, but just keep him sharp, because, Pat obviously tried to keep him fresh the other night, thinking that he didn't want to maybe overdo it with him. I'd say he's a very difficult dog to get his mind right, and I think that's why Pat is sort of, looking at a 3-round competition like the 600. He's mentioned the Race of Champions. I think, 2 weeks before the Derby, then you have the Dundalk International. It's just to sort of keep his mind right more than anything else, I'd say, is the key to him. And I'd say he thought he overdone it last Saturday when he missed a kick.
Yeah, I don't think it'll quirk in a sense where I don't think there's any chance of it being ungenuine. I think there's lapses in concentration. I think, which is more of the issue. But I must say I was so taken by his display the other night. It was heart and mouth stuff those first 60 or 70 yards until you saw him building up the head of steam into the opening corner. Pat has shown me a video in the past of himself and Flashing Willow going up the gallop. Flashing Willow first to hit the ground, and this fellow raced by him up the gallop. Like, Flashing Willow's certainly the top 2 or 3 sprinters in the country, and for what he did to Flashing Willow in that gallop, it's eye catching. Like, I can imagine that there's stuff this dog does. They go, you're sort of rubbing your eyes going, it's not feasibly possible. I've said it before. I think he'd win an open sprint. I think he'd win any distance from an open sprint up to an open 600. And it's all about just, if you thought he was going to start every night like well, I was going to say a clover hair, but something, just a consistent starter. And I just don't know if he'd be beaten at all. But anyway, that's a fantastic success for Ballinabola Ed. Go ahead, Tommy.
It's just important for that dog, I think, for a dog of that ability to get that classic success on his card. He deserves it because of his raw talent. So I was delighted to see him win it. I wouldn't have been coming on here with any relish whatsoever if he got beaten Saturday night. And he's just, like, he's got that raw ability. He was effectively, I know he only won by, what was it, length or length and a half. He was effectively grades ahead. That's what he was. Yeah, he's class.
Which is quite something when you're talking about a classic decider. You know what I mean?
I know.
It sums it up. Just in second spot, Milridge Bryce, like Donal O'Mahony, makes that journey up the road to Shelbourne Park. Like, I was going to say certainly 20, 25 weeks in the year. It's fair commitment. And for Milridge Bryce, who was 33-1 in the week prior to the event, he's 28-1. He ran his heart out, Robert, and in essence, he made the final.
He did, and I suppose, like, for Donald, who would, he wouldn't be one of the top names, as you said, coming up from Cork, and a lot of trainers do that week in, week out. But he must have got a great thrill. I suppose he was a little bit disappointed because turning off the second bend, he was probably dreaming of classic success. And Milridge Bryce had run up an absolute blinder. He was a rapid improver throughout the competition. Like, it was his first real try at 600 as well. So that's definitely his future. But even though he was beaten, I think if they look back at the last number of weeks, they'll be very proud of how he did.
Yeah, they'll have no fear in putting them back into that, the back of the van again and bringing him up to Shelbourne Park. They've had a little bit of success in Shelbourne play. They won the gold collar there a year or two back with a good bitch. But Milridge Bryce absolutely did him proud. He's won 9 times. As you said, Robert, the step up to 600 yards really has worked in his favour, Tommy. He had some good form around Cork, over 5 yards. He's a couple of good runs over 550 on his card. But this was a step up again. If they keep ticking over and maybe get a good run out of him, and maybe in the early rounds of the Derby, and pick up another race or two at Shelbourne Park, like, there's a winter racing festival at the end of the year, 10 grand, 575, 600. Like, this fellow is now second in the 600-yard classic. So that's where I'd be sort of looking.
That's what I'd be thinking too, Ian. And also I just think it was a really good performance to have him at his peak for the final. He had, he broke as well as he had done before. He did everything as well as he could on the night. He just met a monster really on the night. A bit unfortunate in one way, but they should be proud. They should be proud of what he's achieved. And for a dog that, hold good form over 525 in a sharp track like Curraheen Park, and then come to Dublin and compete with the best of the 600-yard dogs, which as we often talk about being the greatest test in greyhound racing, because you've got three full lengths of the straights in Shelbourne Park. It's fabulous performance. He's only
Yeah.
June 20 as well. He's not very old.
Yeah, he's 44 starts. Like the legs aren't running off him by any stretch of imagination. You can imagine he's going to have a pretty full year. Looking at the rest of the McNeil was third, the second outsider of the field, shall we say, at 18-1. He ran on very strongly. I would suggest down the line they'll definitely have a crack at 750 with this fellow. Like he looks so strong. All for the best. Just didn't quite happen from North Story's cash out. Disco Pants was denied the early lead by Milridge Bryce. He was right on the heels of Milridge Bryce, and when Bryce got around him on the opening corner, I would say Don O'Mahony was going, "Oh, you good thing," But all of a sudden, Ed arrived in their shoulder. Disco Pants ran a big race through, or ran very well, ran real credit through the competition. But once he didn't lead in the final, we know the 600 yards does stretch him a little bit. He was never really going to get involved. Let's take a look at the remainder of the card. Before we take a look at the Shelbourne Champion 550, we'll mention one or two of the feature races on the undercard. There were a couple of fine displays by the ladies, Robert. Obviously, Boyle Sports Coco didn't take the flyer she's capable of, but she showed great determination to get up the inside of Lily White Queen on the corner. I thought she was beaten, I must say, when she only led by at that narrow margin into the back straight. But she's a September 21, trained by Dolores Roots. She's strengthening up all the time. And I thought she showed a lot more resolution on Saturday night. And I would not rule this lady out in the Sporting Press Irish Oaks.
Absolutely. We got to see her first in the Puppy Oaks a few weeks ago. She's been running real consistently. As you said, early paces are 40. But like you, just at the third bend, it looked as though she was going to get collared. But she's obviously improving. She's getting stronger every week. And as you said, she's definitely one on the shortlist for the Irish Oaks, as is Johnny Linehan's bitch, Unmatched. It's been a while since we saw the 2-second split broken at Shelbourne Park with a 197. Like we're going back a good bit for that to be done. She was brilliant. Like she beat a really, really good field. She beat Carl Ramsbottom's good dog. She beat a real couple of really, really good dogs. And if she can, do that coming into the Irish Oaks, like Johnny's blessed with the bitches that he's got. He's got Droopy's One Stop. He's got Easy Razzle. But if she can keep doing that in the weeks to come, it'll take a good one to lead her. And I'd say Johnny's so excited with the team of bitches he has going forward.
Yeah, no question about it. Tommy, Unmatched 197. A daughter of Droopy Zallis, of course, I'm sure had a 197 herself. She was a real star. Didn't quite get the big prize she deserved in Dublin, but she was a real star through her racing career. They're two talented bitches, the two winners, Boyle Sports Coco and Unmatched. And, both September 21 whelps. You'd be keen to see how they develop in the coming weeks. Like they're both lightly raced. It was both their 8 starts, so lots of improvement to come. We'd been hinting that we both liked Boyle Sports Coco and wouldn't be surprised at all if she developed into an Oaks bitch. But Unmatched went somewhat quicker. She went a full 3 lengths faster.
I had a little bit of a struggle with the clock the other night. In terms of, I know there's a bits and pieces of trouble in the 550, but the clocks were quite orderly. Then you have 28:18 for Kilkenny Sydney, who can probably do that every night of the week. You have Unmatched doing 28:31. That's a serious run. What did the track change through the night, or was it just the trouble, or
I've been struggling to work out the 550s, and I think the splits are back in the 550s. So I think that could be about 10 spots back on where it was. The 525. Obviously, Kilkenny Sydney came through the bars. Not always his modus operandi, and once he did, he was always going to do a big run. He relished it out front. It looked like a dog that was just so glad to finally get clear room, and he did 28:18, running away from a decent field to win by 8 lengths. So I'd say track was in okay condition. It's not like bouncing sort of top of the ground we'll see in the summer. They are struggling to get the salt out of it. There was an awful lot of salt over a long period over the winter with bad freeze and whatnot. So they are struggling to wash it out. But once the heat starts to come in, it sort of burns off a bit. That's the way they speak about it. But the 550 wasn't an awful lot of clean racing in the Champion 550, which we'll jump into now. The first heat, Ben's Teddy, sort of, I'm not saying it fell into his lap, but he got a lovely run around the bottom 2 bends. He is short of early speed. We know that. He can go up a bit better than he did, as it was Clonbrine Treaty. the Kirby Memorial winner, completely, fluffed the start a little bit in his first run back in Shelbourne Park. I suppose to be expected from the outside. Showed loads of pace, but just couldn't quite get loose. A lot of wasn't used to set the pace. And Ben's Teddy sort of hunted them around and chased, flew up the home straight to score in good fashion. We know exactly how fast he is, Tommy. We learned nothing new about Ben's Teddy. Be interesting to see how Clonbrine Treaty comes on for the run.
Yeah, flat as a pancake, I'd say about Clonbrine Treaty. I don't think it's unfair, and I don't mind it either. If you know what I mean. I think he had a tough campaign in Limerick, and yeah, you could say Ben Teddy was there at semi-final and then ran a final night and all that sort of stuff. But
Probably not off his bench since the Kirby success. So
probably not.
Probably left short
and
with a view that he might get through.
Ben Teddy would be a more seasoned greyhound, had a good bit more racing, and Clonbrine Treaty was really improving through the competition. I have him down. He's very close to the top of my list for the Derby, Clonbrine Treaty, and I'm just ignoring the run the other night. It doesn't. It's a bit like Gaytime Hugo. Actually, later on we'll talk about it in a minute. There's something very similar, I thought. Clonbrine Treaty didn't break, showed a bit of pace, was within maybe 2-3 lengths down as just gone past halfway, and you thought, don't think you're really going to pick up the win here. Ben's Teddy is a powerful tracker and needed to be, and actually tracked nicely at the last bend to come through and win. He's a very good dog, a seriously good dog. But I'm just writing off the Clonbrine Treaty run, just saying, just flat as a pancake, no big deal. Different greyhound in the future.
Rob?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Tommy put it perfectly. He ran flat without any disrespect to the dog, and that's probably a case that they haven't done much for him since the Kirby. But yeah, Ben's Teddy, I think a lot of people took note of him the night of the Winter Festival. There seemed to be an awful lot of money from that night, and he ran a blinder in defeat. I think they thought he'd win the Kirby. He was knocked out in the semi-finals when everything seemed to go wrong for him that night, along with a couple of other Pat's dogs. But if you look at his time, and he's probably not a dog who's going to make any week, but he's well clear of everything else, of the other 3 winners, which probably means at this stage he might be the dog to beat. Now, things did happen for him, sort of rounding off the final bend. He got a lovely split, but from the second bend, this guy just absolutely flies. Tommy mentioned Clonbrine Treaty as on his shortlist for the Irish Derby. I'd have Ben's Teddy as a bit of value if you were getting fancy prices about him, because he looks like a dog I don't think we've seen the best of yet. And I'd say at this stage, he's probably the dog to beat in the Champion 550.
Okay, let's move on to the second heat. Price's Cahill came from out of the clouds, big finisher. He was last into the opening corner, bit of traffic and schmozzling on the opening bend. He found himself fourth, and sort of halfway down the back straight, I copped him, and I sort of just suggested he'd be finishing fast, and as he did, got up in the latter stages to beat Belinda's Finn and Story's Law. Story's Law set the pace. I'd be a bit disappointed he set the pace and could only post 30-43. Tommy, he was a dog with 28-20 odd in his card. Belinda's Finn is one of those dogs where the penny's going to drop pretty soon. I've no doubt there's a big run in him, but at the moment it's just not quite happening.
Oh, he did 29.50 some night. I've no doubt about that in terms of ability. I think he was unlucky in this race. I think you latched on to Price's Cahill in your commentary and had it kind of ticked a while before, because Belinda Finn is a strong runner as well. And I was kind of thought, geez, he's neglecting Belinda Finn here. And Price's Cahill came over the top and won it, as you kind of expected, I think, when you saw it. But Belinda Finn just ran into every bit of trouble. And it is just that little lack of early pace that would break your heart. Where that bit of trouble where you have enough early pace.
He's enough to get into trouble and not enough to get out of it.
Not enough to get out of it, yeah. And that's where I think he finds himself at the moment. Some night it'll happen for him that, like, he'll be in 1 and 2 and move off slightly. He'll get a clear run around the bend and he'll go off and do 29.50 or something like that. I think he's a very good dog. Price's Cahill clearly didn't get an entirely clear run either now. Not entirely clear run, but I'd say similar kind of, well, I was going to say similar kind of dog to Belinda's Finn, but he actually lacks early pace, really. I don't think he's going to find the early pace, did he? I think we've probably seen enough of him at this stage. Powerful tracker, nice performance and all that, but just might need a little bit of luck and running in the semi-finals.
The fact that they've already raced him over the 750 or 725 or 735, 725, isn't it, in Waterford, would suggest that, or 730, three distances I mentioned, would suggest that, after this competition, the likes of the Corncool Cullen could be an option before perhaps stepping back in trip again for an Irish Derby campaign. Be interesting to see how he takes to it. with the 750, you probably do need that little bit of early speed as well. And I just wonder if he can improve his trapping, because there's probably enough early speed to contest over 750, but it's a case of improving his trapping. Onto the third of the heats where Run Faster sort of took advantage. The dog that you were pretty keen on, Tommy, Born and Mick, led into the corner. First time around Shelbourne Park, I think it's safe to say, looked like a dog that certainly hadn't trial there. Just brushed the fence and took a slight ease, and all of a sudden race over, Run Faster, got around the outside and went on to score. Ballyhimmock and Rex, I thought, showed loads of pace into the third bend, but you always knew that Run Faster was going to cut him off at that point, which he did, and went on to win in 30-12. Again, times weren't sensational, but a nice display by Run Faster. But I think plenty more to come from those in behind as well, Ballyhimmock and Rex and Born and Mick.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right in what you said there about Born and Mick, because I thought he was going wrong going into the bend, and or something was he was feeling something. His gallop seemed to change. He nearly was leaning down on his front legs, getting low on them, and I was worried that he was going to tumble. To be honest about it, I'm glad he didn't, and I was amazed, absolutely stunned to see that he showed pace again coming home. I'd say I'd say if he was 100% right, he's Derby class, and at latter stages of a Derby class, I'd say that's what he is. I mean, I couldn't believe the performance after what happened into the bend. I was thinking when he popped out, this is all over now. You'll run this bend really well. You'll be in front going down the back, and good night, Irene. And it probably would have been a run close enough to the time of the first heat, but I would just be concerned after that run now.
Yeah, we'll see. It's a case of a watching brief until we.
I hope you're right. I hope you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Robert, the two, sorry, I didn't come to the previous heat. Obviously, Price of Cahill, a big finisher. Paul has had a great record with this type of dog, and Run Faster, both in winning from Trap 5.
Yeah, the two typical type greyhounds that you'd associate with their trainers. Obviously, Price of Scotland, you said they've already run him over a further trip. He looks nailed on for the Cormac Cullen at this stage, regardless of how he gets on in this. And he'll probably step back then in trip for the Irish Derby. But yeah, he looks a greyhound going places. Not a greyhound I think we're going to hear and see a lot of. And Run Faster probably is a similar profile to Callaway Pro-Am and Callaway Masters around this time last year. Owen sort of referenced him in the same bracket as those two when we were chatting to him on Saturday night. He did well to win, and he's a dog you could see improving. And we chatted about this on Saturday night. This competition has always been sort of a stepping stone for much bigger things, and we've definitely seen 5 or 6 greyhounds, even if they didn't win or qualify, that we're going to hear a lot of in the coming months.
Yeah, funny enough, there was a lot of dogs that went out that I'd be sort of nearly more keen on than some of the ones that stayed in. But that's for another day. On to the last of the 4 heats. Robert, we'll go to you here. Scaglietti and Papa d'Oro, they did all they could to knock each other to the ground. And it was just a case of racing. They were just side by side. Papa d'Oro, middle seed, but moved right in onto the fence, and Scaglietti himself clashed once, twice, 3 times. Scaglietti came out worst. I don't know how Papa d'Oro managed to hold his lead. Scaglietti, as he was being sent backwards, held up the chasing pack, and it allowed Papa d'Oro to go to the front, and he quickened again to the third bend, looked like he was going to win pretty comfortably. But Blast Off Salah, I think Tommy might have mentioned it, one of the fastest maidens in the country, ran on strongly in second spot. Glengar Ace back in third. But you look at the names that went out, Scaglietti and Gaytime Hugo, 2 dogs that you'd expect much better from in the future. But Papa d'Oro, good winner for Pat Buckley, Robert.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a good night for Pat, obviously, and not taking anything away from the winner, but I find it hard to sort of sum up this race. Scaglietti, obviously, he was unlucky in the Kirby final, and nothing seems to be going his way at the moment. But yeah, it was a funny race, and as you've alluded to it, there's a lot of greyhounds who didn't qualify on Saturday night in this competition that I suppose their trainers thought they might go all the way. And listen, you need luck on the night, but not taking anything away from the winner. But you'd like to see that race run again and see what might happen.
Yeah, Tommy, if you look at the dogs that went out of the competition, like you throw in, let's say, Clonbrien Treaty, Hookham Goodzuis, Haka Carlo, Gaytime Hugo, Scaglietti went to race, you got a fair contest.
I wouldn't like to. You would, of course. I wouldn't like to underestimate the winner there, the Pat d'Oro. I know they think a huge amount of him. He's
Yeah,
actually from,
very, very, very well thought of.
very,
I think
very well.
he was bought out. I think he was bought out of Yall. I think he bought himself
He
and
was
his brother out of Yall. Yeah.
Andy Lynch had him in Yall. He had the exile dogs. I think there was very strong word of him coming from the kennel for the Kirby. kind of surprised me. He was extremely inexperienced going to the Kirby, and I thought, geez, he'd do well to kind of qualify a bit. He showed an awful lot in the first round. He was second to Clonard Duke in the second round, and then got knocked out. I would say they were disappointed a little bit, but I would think that he'll improve a lot. He showed a lot of early pace. Scaglietti led at Kirby Memorial, and he was showing that a little bit better early pace than him. And actually, I actually think credit to him. He showed great determination to get around. Scaglietti's awful unlucky again now to be finding trouble at the first bend, having broken and done. He's done his bit of the bargain. He broke as well as he could and put himself in the position to go and win the race. And then he found the dog that was just determined to get across and around in front of him. So, yeah, I would think that race. We'll probably laugh at that race somewhere down the line and thinking, look at the 6 dogs that were in that. He's a Shelbourne champion 550. Yeah. It just looked top class, top to bottom.
Yeah, a couple of other performances on the night we didn't mention. Obviously, Gizmo Cash was named Sprinter of the Year on Friday night, Curryheen Park, and he was a fantastic winner of the open sprint, flashing from Trap 4. That's not the first time he's done that this year. He flashed out of Trap 4 on April 8th, and again, flashed out of Trap 4 on, May 5th? May 6th, should I say, on both occasions, 18:54, Robert, a measure of his consistency.
Absolutely, yeah. We touched on it on Saturday night. I think we're enjoying a little bit of a golden era for sprinters, because we're getting these open class sprints that are just mouth watering. And on this occasion, Gizmo Cash got the better of Flashing Willow. It was only the fourth time they've ever met, and they're 2-2. And I think there's going to be a lot of buckles between these two going on. Like, in the years gone by, we'd have to wait maybe for Derby final night, and maybe one or two other nights during the year to get these clashes. But we seem to be getting a lot of them. We got it at Limerick a couple of weeks ago. We had it obviously the other night. Champion Stakes night, Corn Cuculla night. You'd have to think that, more sprints the better. And in fairness to the likes of Corbrack Prince, he's in his fourth year. Obviously, he broke the track record in Lifford a few weeks ago. He's run a blinder in third. But, we had Pablo Escobar and Hello Hammond building up this rivalry, obviously before Hello Hammond was retired. I think we're onto something similar with Gizmo Cash and Flashing Willow, and maybe one or two more going forward.
Yeah, no, good sprinters, and we look forward to seeing them both clashing again, no doubt, before the sprint in Dundalk, before they go head to head over that wonderful sprint distance. We'll move on. Last race in the card, won by Callaway Masters. Just thought it was worth the mention. Big run from him. He's a model of consistency for Dennis Murphy and Owen McKenna, and it was a good finish to the evening. We'll move on because we have a lot of ground to cover. Tommy, the Limerick Oaks on Saturday night. We saw two good semi-finals. Rafa's Friend, who was certainly highlighted by a certain host last week, said real eye catcher in the feet, really staying on stoutly. Well, she led early the other night. She won in 28:53. She set the standard in the opening heat. Rafa's Friend from Glengar Aurora and Beaming Becca, and the second heat went to Quivers Magic, who was always prominent, took it up off the last bend to win by a length. Raha Mofo, who I would say for one stride into the third bend was sitting last, is beaten a length in second and is a distance cleared to the escape. It was a remarkable run from her. She sort of got crowded out of it in the early yards, just dogs around her into that bend, and we know like she's a little bit wary in the opening corner. But on the other night, I thought she showed enough drive to sort of try and get through the gap, but she was balked, but she recovered very, very well to be beaten just a length in the second. Tommy, some good bitches down in the Limerick Oaks. One would suspect that Rafa Mofo will still be the one to beat in the final.
You must have dropped out that time you were tipping Rafa's Friend. I don't remember that. I think Barry Call hosted last week. Good determination from Rafa's Friend to get around the bend in the first heat the other night.
Yeah.
Just had to really drive the bend to get around, and hence maybe that probably took a little bit off the clock. Quivers Magic and Rahamofo, like the two of them were finishing. Quivers Magic now got held up a couple of times as well. It wasn't a perfectly clear run, but Rahamofo's finishing pace was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. I like. She's a bitch that wins from every trap. So I mean, I don't particularly like her in trap two, but she can win from anywhere. She has immense ability. I think she will with any bit of a clear run. She will be hard to beat in, because you know how much she could knock off the clock on that.
Yeah, no question about it. Rob?
Yeah, pretty much echo everything Tommy said. Two good winners. Rafa's Mofo was only having her 11th race. She's obviously improving. She's improved quite a bit the last few weeks. But just Raha Mofo, there's sometimes when you see a greyhound who gets beat, you're nearly more excited that she's got beat than the winner, because she's just electric. She's run an absolute blinder. The Quivers Magic, as Tommy said, ran really well. It was messy enough. Everything didn't really go her way. But you just have to think of Rahamofo. If she just gets any way of a clear run in the final this weekend, she's just going to be impossible to beat.
Yeah, Quivers Magic is 28:46 in Shelbourne Park. You know, like she's a very fast lady, and for Mofo to get as close as she did is pretty remarkable. A couple of very talented ladies there. Look forward to that final next weekend. We'll move on. Kilkenny, gentlemen, there was some fine displays. We won't go too deep into Kilkenny because so much can change week to week with these unraced pups. But the two things I'll take out of it that Graham Holland doesn't normally target these type of events. The fact that he had a treble should be concerning to everyone else, and I thought that the Pastanas produced. I thought there was some fine displays. The one I'll take out of the opening round was Ballinabola, son of Pastana out in Ewan Madam. So obviously from a very fast family, didn't get to the front too early, had to sort of battle his way around, and really charged into the third bend. He was 4-1, like it was a wide open contest, but I thought he looked a very talented type in the opening heat. Not the fastest heat winner in 28.91, just a spot behind the fastest heat winner. Lots to like about him, Tommy and Robert. Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, as you said, it was a great night for Pastana. He had 5 of the 8 winners. I think it's the richest Kilkenny race now that they've ever had. It's over 30 grand, 15 for the winner. And I was chatting to Carl Romsbaden before racing Saturday night, and he reckons there's probably 14 or 16 dogs still in it who can win it. It's that good of a stake. You mentioned Graham, obviously he's targeted this, and he hasn't in the past. He had treble. Unreal Bruiser was the fastest of the lot, 28.60, bred by Paddy McCormick. He was another, obviously, for Troopy Sydney. And I thought that Jennifer O'Donnell's dog, who won Steven Beach, she's a half brother to Scooby Prince. He was very good. He beat Ballymac Copper of the Dowlings. That was in Heat 4 in 28.67. I think there's 2 good dogs there, but there was a lot of dogs beaten, and a lot of dogs went out on Friday night that I think connections think the world of. I know Murtalahi was ruining his luck. He had a couple of really good dogs that didn't even qualify. There was a couple of messy races, but I think, as you said, Ian, the fact that Graham Holland has targeted it, and the fact that we've got a bit of everything. I think this Kilkenny races, it always produces champions, but I think this year's renewal is as good as we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, Tommy, I think the signs are good. There's a chance that this is every bit as strong this year as Tralee. I think we'll be hearing a lot more of some of these dogs.
Yeah, it's sure when that sort of money is available, that's phenomenal money, 32,000 overall prize money. I would like to put a little shout out to the bookmakers there, because the returned SPs are they're more in keeping with what they should be.
Yeah,
and they aren't in most tracks.
I spoke to Johnny Mitchell on Saturday night at Shelbourne Park, who obviously stands in Kilkenny, one of the strong layers down there. Very strong market in Kilkenny. He said he laid 2 even €1,000 bets, and both of them won, and he still went out winning a few quid. So betting was obviously brisk on the night, and not afraid to take on dogs. And why wouldn't you be in the opening round of an unraced stake when, like, there's dogs at 5 and 6-1 that, like, are probably capable of doing 28.50 in Shelbourne Park, and it's all well and good people backing 1 to short at 4-7 or 4-6, but like these can be beaten, especially in their racing debut.
Well, a man said to me who was involved one time. He said to me, "Bad bookmakers ruin Greyhound racing," and I can entirely understand where he's coming from, because it's just people won't go to a lot of places because of the overround that they're asked to deal with. Like, those are, I haven't gone through them all, but I just went picked one of them there because they struck out at me. Picked one there and it was about 135, which is what they asked for in the SIS. Like, it's not giving away money either, but it's still competitive enough compared to what we're used to in a lot of places. So I would just say, I think it's worth mentioning when people make the effort to do the job right, they deserve to be credited for it. So it is good to see that. And obviously the racing manager's doing it right. Obviously he's run race, so that's slightly different. But overall, in terms, they're getting competitive races, they're getting competitive markets, and they're obviously getting people in because they think they can go in and have a bet.
Yeah, there's no question. A normal Friday night when there's good competitive graded racing and the odd open race, like, the overround is less than the 135 as well. I suppose it's the mere fact that these are unraced greyhounds as well. Have to leave a little bit of margin for themselves. But no, I tend to agree with you. A strong betting market. Anything else you want to highlight there, Tommy, that caught your eye, or Yeah, it was interesting to see Michael O'Donovan had a winner, 29.05 style, and he had another dog to finish second. He's after winning it for the last 2 years with Serene Ace and Another Holiday. Now, both of those dogs very similar. Stunning early speed, massive to the third bend. Maybe that's the type of dog we should be looking out for. But I thought Style ran well to score, and the Stone Park dog is clearly talented as well as Stone Park Sid. I think he was in the opening heat or the second heat. Um, I can't
I
find
don't
it.
know. I don't know the Kilkenny track well enough, to be honest about it. Is there something? Is there something about it that you would say when you look at Kilkenny track? This is the type of dog that comes out of it, or this is the type of dog that I should look for when I'm having a bet in Kilkenny. Is there something? Is it, or is it very
I
straightforward?
think any type of dog can win there, but like every other track, early speed certainly does help. There's a fair dash into that opening corner at Kilkenny, and if you get around that opening bend, there's every chance that there'll be a little bit of traffic in behind. So I suppose that's why it suited that type of dog. But we've seen powerhouses win this competition in the past. You know what I mean? I go back years and years and years ago, and maybe under a different name, but it did Inspire Lakita win this competition. You know what I mean? And you can be sure he wasn't leading on the corner too often.
I love the fact that it's a
And
fake, that it's a slow track as well. That the dogs are doing
yeah,
28.90 and not doing 28.20 around it. I think
Yeah.
it's good for the education. Oh, it's clearly there is something about it that takes a bit of work for a greyhound. I think a lot of people used to love coming to Yaw with their pups because to school them, because it taught them a lot. I think Kenny must be the same. If it's a track that has these are some of the likelihood, even though you've seen them once, these are likely some of the best pups in the country. And so for the best at the moment to be doing 28.90, 28.91, 28.99, that sort of time. I mean, I love that. I absolutely love that. I think that's what it should be.
Yeah. Robert?
I mean, you mentioned Stone. You mentioned Stone Park said he was second to the fastest winner,
That's
Unreal
right.
Bruiser,
Yeah. 100%.
and they were miles clear of the third. So
Yeah.
he's just obviously bumped into one, but there'll be loads of greyhounds that were beaten on Friday night. That connections will probably feel that they win it, but it just yeah, like there's just Tommy mentioned the betting over round, and yourself when you've got an unraced pup that's going well, you just can't wait to have a right cut. And that was the case, I'd say, with the eight heats. And it's great to hear John taking that money, and whether he's coming out on top or not, that's the way it should be. And Kilkenny's always been a great betting track, and it's great
Yeah.
to hear those stories. And the SPs are what they are, because that's what gets people racing.
Yeah, indeed. Perfect segue. We spoke of John Mitchell. Of course, he had a big Friday evening outside of Kilkenny. He is one of the part owners of Born Warrior. He's married to Jennifer O'Donnell, who had quite the evening at the National Greyhound Awards. She won she didn't win Brood Bitch of the Year, excuse me. Her bitch, Mount Taylor Queen, won Brood Bitch of the Year. And of course, Born Warrior was named Dog of the Year and Supreme Greyhound of the Year. Bitch of the Year went to Raham Mofo. That would have been a very hotly contested category, Tommy, as we know. Moving on, the Stud Dog of the Year, no surprise to anyone, was Droopy Sydney. I was calling out their achievements before we announced that result, and you wouldn't believe how long I was calling out what the progeny of Droopy Sydney won last year. What else do I have to mention? The Stayer of the Year, of course, was Crafty Kokoro. Sprinter of the Year, Gizmo Cash. Future Star winner, Clona Duke. And one more. Is there one more Canine Award? Oh God, I'm gonna get absolutely lambasted if I forget to mention one. Tommy, deserving winners.
Flash,
There was
Cash,
big pardon.
the Sprinter of the Year.
No, I said Gizmo Cash. I said Gizmo
Did you?
Cash.
Okay.
Was there I don't think there's any of them contentious really, Tommy. There was one or two where you could have gone either way, one of two or one of three perhaps. But I think the results were all pretty fair.
Yeah, well, I can't even remember what I voted for at the time, because that's how tight they were. I'm
Yeah,
sure at the
yeah.
time when we were talking, and we would have been to and fro about them all, and like you push one and I'd push back on something else, and then somebody else would push back on something, and next thing you kind of be caught between them all. So I was
Yeah.
there on Friday night going, can't remember what I voted for here. I can't remember, because sometimes you say, "Oh, that's an absolute certainty," and that's it. There's no doubt about it. But I actually didn't know that's how tight it was, and
Yeah.
it's going to be that way for a while, because, as I've laboured the point about, the standard of greyhound is so high at the moment. It really is. If something can stand out as a dog or a supreme greyhound of the year this year, I don't know.
Yeah. Do you know
Unless of course
I only said it
Swords
the
X with English Derby, you're already eyeing them up.
I only said it the other evening to someone at Shelbourne Park that in years where it's so tight, you tend to favour a Derby or an Oaks winner for those categories. And
Yeah.
the same with a Cork Cullen or a Irish Sprint Cup. And sometimes other dogs have achieved more overall in the rest of the year. But in terms of if you're landing the big prize and it's very, very tight in the decision, that sometimes sways you. And I think that this was certainly one of those years.
Yeah, I think it was Ian, because I think, had Swords Rex won the Produce Stakes or the Ledger or the Laurels or something, you would be saying, God, it's going to be hard to go against Swords Rex. But then,
Well, it was very hard to go
you,
against them either way. And even Romeo Magico had such a year as well. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's really good, and of course shout out to the other winners, and Sheila Spillane. Of course, great to see Sheila there on Friday night. She's been just a star, one of those people that, yeah, a lot of people would never hear about, who's been involved in greyhound racing all her life and continue to be so with JJ Fenley here in Youghal, just outside Youghal, between Youghal and Killa. Um, Fabulous stuff. Jimmy Maguire, he was there to you interviewing him, and actually the two welfare.
Jimmy was in flying form.
And you know what? The two welfare award winners, I thought you did Zoom with the two of them. I thought they spoke fairly well.
Yeah, they did.
I
Yeah.
was,
No,
I,
they did.
I actually liked a lot.
Lisa Dale and Janet Deal, we must give them a mention. Doing great work over in Florida with our greyhounds, retired greyhounds from Ireland, and long may they continue to bring dogs over and get a bit of sun on their back. Robert Denton, to take out of the awards, was there anything that you thought was contentious, or are you happy enough with all the way it went?
Well, when you look at just some of the stats with the winner, like, let's start with Born Warrior. Obviously he'd won the champion plate before he went on to win the Derby. 17 of his 18 races in 2022, he wasn't out of the first three. Like, how can you compare that? Gizmo Flash broke 2 track records, won 11 sprints during the year. Crafty Kokoro, from the first round of the Cork Cullen to the Irish Derby, she ran 12 consecutive weeks in Shelbourne and was never out of the first three. Like, how can you go against that? I'd say Clonadduke is going to be on the shortlist for Dog of the Year in 2023. He's been such a star already. And Droopy Sydney, 7 winners at Shelbourne last Saturday night. I think he 10 one night, 10 of the 12. Like, he's long odds on to be stud Dog of the Year, I'd say, for the next 5 years, the way it's going. It's just incredible. I just don't think how you can.
I think age might catch up on him. You know what I mean? We all slow down in our youth or in our older years, as certainly as sires. Tommy was for a while there. I thought he was going to do a Droopy Sydney, to be honest. I mean, it just seemed every week he rang me. Oh, Noelle's pregnant. Anyway, we'll move on. We have to touch on one thing before we just touch on the Dundalk, or before we touch on the Towcester action. I want to mention the puppy in Dundalk. The Update Your Resets app regularly ON1 400 final in Dundalk on Saturday night was won by a young greyhound called Avoca's Joker. Had been beaten on debut. It's a June 21 whelp. Been beaten on debut. But the other evening, a dog having its second start broke behind the dog called Griezmann, flew to the corner and absolutely raced away from to win in 20.99. Anytime a dog breaks 21 seconds in Dundalk, it's impressive. But for a dog in just his second career start to do it, I think it's safe to say we should be keeping an eye on this fellow. He's the son of Magical Bale out of Hello Laura, and he's trained by Shay Campbell, who it seems every single year he has 1 or 2 serious sprinters at his disposal, and he potentially has another one. Just looks a real prospect.
And that's good to hear, because Shay, when we were chatting him up in Lifford, he was saying he lost two of his real good dogs had injured. He was a bit down, and you could see by him he was like, this is not what you need. But it's great to have another superstar coming up, and it's probably something that's going to keep him awake now at night for a good reason.
Yeah, for a good reason. Yeah, well, he'll leave plenty of targets, I'd imagine. The Irish Sprint Cup being chief amongst you, you'd imagine. But the way he finished the night, I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed the 4 bends. So he certainly wanted to put into the notebook. Gentlemen, Towcester on Sunday afternoon. Ireland, just in the last week or so, it seems that I was at one stage worried we wouldn't have 10 runners in the English Derby, and just few whispers here and there. I spoke to Peter Cronin, who doesn't look like he's going. Paul Hennessy's going to have a couple. Obviously we know Graham Holland is going over with a few. Liam Dowling, I caught up with him yesterday, and I didn't think it was going to happen, but he's going over. He's bringing the likes of Ballymac and Ballymacfin and a couple of others, perhaps John Joe, and we'll see where that team ends up. But it's great to hear that he's going. Jack Kennelly trialled Beeper's Lariat on Saturday afternoon. So Jack is obviously fancying a few weeks in the UK. Hopefully he gets a few weeks, because Beeper's Lariat is a very promising young greyhound. Won obviously his first and second round heats in the Kirby Memorial. So he's clearly a dog to keep an eye on. I don't know if he'll win a derby, but certainly shown great ambition, young Jack Kennedy going over. And then, of course, on Sunday afternoon, we saw Dolores racing a couple, Mustang Jet and Tullig Raven. Didn't happen for Mustang Jet, but he can ignore that run completely. He'll improve greatly for it. But Graham Holland was the one making the headlines on Sunday afternoon, Robert. Swords Rex popped out. Pop being the sort of a little bit of, a little bit understated. He absolutely rocketed from trap 4. He went under the 4 seconds. The new traps are certainly going to suit a dog like him, a natural starter. And he did a 28.76 run, taking 2 spots off the previous best of Priceless Jet. It was a hell of a run. He laid down a marker. I wrote yesterday morning that expect Swords Rex to emerge an easy winner and expect him to be a much shorter price on Monday morning for English Derby Glory. I think it's safe to say that will be happening.
Absolutely. I was looking forward to seeing him run, and after 5 strides, it was game, set, and match. He was gone, and it was great to see him do such a good run. Obviously, he'd run the week before, was his first run, and even though he didn't win, he caught an awful lot of people's eye. He went into notebooks because he did an awful lot wrong. He didn't really know, he didn't seem to know where he was, and he's come on great. And he's now in the perfect position, you'd have thought, heading to Towcester in a few weeks for the English Greyhound Derby. Brilliant run. We know how good he is here, but for him to go over there and do it so early at Towcester before the competition starts is huge. And to do a run like that, I know From Post to Pillar did a good run after racing, but to me, Swords Rex deserves to be favourite.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think the clock will go again. I think the track is probably run that bit better, and the traps are certainly aiding the issue, Tommy. But it was a good start for the Irish Challenge, shall we say? They ran reasonably well the previous week. We had 2 winners in the likes of Buckles Crystal and Jack Tavern Bella. But we sort of raised the bar again on Saturday. Clona Duke, of course, impressed. His first run in Towcester, and to run away from a talented field to break 29 seconds, hugely encouraging for Kevin O'Brien and Graham Holland. And of course, he has already named Future Star award winner on Friday night.
Yeah, I liked his run for the fact that he didn't fly out and he showed a lovely bit of acceleration. He looked like he was determined to keep the inside to himself. When there was the challenge, was it 4 maybe challenging early? And I thought he ran very, very well. I see he's now about 16-1 to win the Derby. Swords Rex is a general 10-1 chance, or if you rush, you can get 6-1 in a place. He is favourite with one firm, Swords Rex, but general 10-1, 14, 16-1, Clona Duke. Clona Duke is obviously going to be open to plenty of improvement. I am interested to hear what you say about Liam Dowling running and bringing the likes of Ballymac Marino and that. This could be red hot, Jet.
I was fearing that there was something amiss, like a little bit of a bug or something in the kennel, because I hadn't seen much of them. Like, he didn't have a challenger in the Easter Cup. He had no runners in the Kirby, really. Not the big guns. Didn't challenge in the 600, and I just sort of said to him, I said, "You've been quiet." He said, "We looked at the scheduling, and he said they're going to have a break sometime, because it's all action from here on in." And he said, "No, we've decided to have a go at England, and it'll be." All guns blazing then for the remainder of the year with the likes of Ballymac Marino and Ballymac Finn. And he said Ballymac John Joe had a small setback because we were sort of somewhat shocked not to see him in actions, a couple of stakes. And he says he's hoping that he'll be right, and he's hoping to trial them on Thursday week at Towcester, and then straight into the Derby action. He'll again be staying at Peter Harden's kennel, which is nice and close. And of course, Peter knows Towcester better than anyone. He's a contract trainer there, so there'll be plenty of inside knowledge. And Ballymac Marino did 17.15 at Tralee only a week or two ago. That's sensational. And Ballymac Finn did 17.40, but he said, don't worry about him, he's ticking on lovely. So all of a sudden the Irish Challenge has gone from maybe depending on Graham Holland to all of a sudden we have a bit of strength and depth. And looking through the English runners, like From Post to Pillar is the favourite, but I would suspect that 4 or 5 of the Irish dogs that I've mentioned would lead him 9 nights out of 10. And if Swords Rex or Clona Duke leads you, not picking them up too handy.
You wear the most green tinted glasses of all.
and unashamedly so. Robert, you like a little nibble in the anti-post market? We'll be back then.
Yeah, obviously, after the Easter Cup when Graham sort of hinted that he was going across the water with Swords Rex, or you'd be mad not to take the 20-1. I generally don't say it beforehand because it ends up in tears, but 20-1 was the wrong price. I said it to you, and you sort of said to me, I'm already on. So, yeah, I backed on the Duke as well, just hoping that he'd go over. It looks as though he's going to go there. They're the only two I've backed, but as you said, it's great now that the Dowlings are going over because something like Marino or Finn, if you could get fancy prices with them, because listen to the three of you last week, and it doesn't look the greatest of English derbies, and the home team outside from post to pillar doesn't look as good as it could be. Now I know we say it every year, and we're going over thinking we only have to turn up, and it's never that easy. But
but what you're
yeah,
saying is this year we only have to turn up.
yeah, pretty much. Not quite, but I think we have a very strong team. I think Grain is a very strong team. Like when you look at the Romeo Magico did what he did the other day, things didn't go his way,
Yeah,
and yet he
I
manoeuvres.
completely remiss of me not to bring us around to
Yeah,
Romeo Magico, defending champion. Like everything went wrong for him, and he absolutely hammered home to be beat just the length in 29-23. He's going to need to find his trapping boots. It's something he hasn't really
yeah.
found this year, but we know how capable he is, and it'll be well, you'd want to be an idiot to completely rule him out.
Yeah, and I think he's going into this year's derby in better form than he was last year. Like he was obviously a bit unlucky in the Easter Cup final that we probably wouldn't have beaten Swords Rex, but he'd pushed Swords Rex the week before. In the quarterfinals or the second round, he'd done a 29-54 run. He was unlucky at Limerick. They had a little bit of a setback after Limerick, and obviously that was his first run on Sunday. He's definitely a dog you'd have to really knock over not to qualify because he's just got that track craft about him. There's a little bit of a Westmeath Hawk about him. He just knows what to do at the right stage, and he'd have a great chance of getting to a final. Like I think he's is he 50s for the Irish Derby, which is a great price. I don't know what price he's for the English Derby, but if you were getting 33s or bigger, you'd have to consider him. Jack Tavern Bella, Stouts there. She must have a great chance of going a long way. And obviously the Clona bitch as well, or the Buckles bitch as well. Gray won it last year and he'd wait a long time to do so. I think he's got a better team this year.
Yeah, yeah, all signs are good, Tommy.
Oh, they are. They're great. I can't wait to see Ballymac Marino.
Mm.
I think he's potentially, right over the very top drawer. I mean, top kind of.
Liam was keen enough to talk about him. It's always a good sign.
Yeah, yeah.
And his exact words were he ran a bit disappointing the last time. I have it written down here. I have the actual piece written. It'll be online by the time you're watching this. And he says he ran a bit disappointing last time. He says, but that could be the best thing ever happened. He probably learned more in that race than he had done in his
That was in
previous.
Shelbourne, wasn't it?
Yeah, because in his previous 4 or 5 outings, through the Juvenile Classic and whatnot, he really hadn't had to work for it. He got to the front early and just been able to dominate. So it was great for him to get around dogs, and he'll learn plenty from it. I suspect the way he's talking that, yeah, he thinks an awful lot of Ballymac Marino. So there's a tip in itself. Of course,
Get
Ballymac
on.
Finn is a derby runner up, and he's looked potentially at times this year better this year than he was last year. So that's also a thing to keep in mind. And Tommy, you're a bit of a fan of Ballymac John Show, so I thought if he was fresh and well, something you talk about one or two of the big finishers. None would be as big a finisher as Ballymac John Joe if he arrived there in his pomp.
Yeah, he's kind of a difficult enough dog to place in some ways. You need to find the right track for him as well, but his style of running and the like. But he has immense ability overall. Be interested to see how he takes Towcester, and if he was back to his best. I think did you say that he said he had a bit of a hold up or he had
Just
some sort of
just
issue?
just a small setback, he said. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not surprised to hear that when just what we've seen in the last while from him. Like he's still to show us exactly what he's capable of, in my opinion.
yeah,
But the problem is if you're going to concede ground early to the likes of, to the quality dogs that are there at the moment. I don't, I might as well go on record. You were looking for an Aegis, I'm the man. Romeo Magico, I just don't think he's at his very best. I don't think he has been for a good while. I think he's probably a couple of lengths below his form of last year,
and
and that
those,
might
but
be.
those, and the problem is those couple of lengths are all to the corner because he's showing
Well,
every bit as much speed down the back and home, but he's just not getting to the corner like he could.
yeah, no, it's not to say that that there might have been something that has kind of held him up slightly, maybe, and maybe he'd prove me wrong. But I mean, in terms of backing him at the moment, I couldn't dream of it because I think he's in all the runs we've seen this year. I've felt, and even when he won a heat in Shelbourne, was it?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
He set the standard.
sorry.
He set the standard in the quarterfinals, wasn't it,
Yeah,
Rob?
but
Yeah.
but it was like it was the soft seas of all time. I mean, it was a gimme, like it was an absolute gimme. I think we said the previous week that he was the greatest certainty of all time. And that's what I saw. I just haven't been
We've
fully
said that
convinced yet.
before and been wrong.
Yeah, oh no, and we'll be wrong. And we'll be wrong again. I'll be wrong when he wins the English Derby, but he's just not for me. He's been a smashing dog, but I think you can't concede anything. You can't be any bit below your best when the quality. It's a you're not taking on one dog and saying, oh well, then he can't beat Swordrex, and then Swordrex does something wrong, he can beat him. But look at it, there are 10, 12, 14 dogs there, and you go, wow.
Yeah,
They're
well,
serious, serious
it's like this. If you're only third, if you're only third or fourth in the pecking order in your own kennel, do you know what I mean? Yeah, you have a long way to go to win a derby
well,
at this moment in time.
when you say that, and yet Graham Holland won the Kirby with a dog that he didn't think at the time was ready to win a Kirby in the sense of he had other dogs in it that he thought were his Clone Duke and Romeo Hanzo,
Yeah.
like dogs that he thought were more likely winners of the Kirby, and then they got knocked out, and all of a sudden he still has three in the final. So
Yeah.
yeah, that'll show you the depth that's there at the moment. So yeah, look, if Romeo Magical wins it, best of luck to him, because he has been a terrific dog for David Furniture and for Graham Holland. But I think he's 40-1, and I think that kind of tells you where he stands at the moment.
No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. We look forward to it. A busy, busy, busy little time coming ahead of us. It just so happens it's a quiet enough week next week, so we are going to take a break next Monday, but we will be back the following week to take in all the Oaks action. We're the Sporting Press Irish Oaks, of course. That means one thing. Means that the ladies are about to set a light to Shelbourne Park, and of course it always runs side by side with the English Derby, so we'll have loads to talk about when we come back in a fortnight's time. But that's it from us on this Monday evening. My thanks once again to the exiled Dub, who wasn't as crusty today. Maybe things are picking up. Maybe the sun is shining down in Youghal. And Robert Catterson, who for once we were asking the questions of him rather him asking the questions himself. Rob, I'm surprised you're not playing golf. It's a Monday. Don't you always play golf on a Monday?
Sometimes, but I'm actually we're doing a kennel visit to Graham Hollands for Race and Post Greyhound TV. That'll be on hopefully this week. So we're going to go down, get the latest on his dogs going across, maybe have a chat about his English Derby record, and maybe try and get a nugget or two that hopefully will make us a bit happier down the line.
We look forward to that, Robert. That'll be available both on their online sort of presence, YouTube. They'll be tweeting it out, and of course they'll be showing it on the program through the week. You'd imagine plenty of nuggets will come out of that. Make sure to ask him about those youngsters down in Kilkenny. He is a nice crop, and ask him why he went down that route. He normally sort of avoids the big unraced stakes, but interesting to see that he has 3 or 4 very talented youngsters in that.
On the list, don't worry.
Don't worry about it. I have a feeling you were going to ask plenty of questions. Anyway, gentlemen, thanks very much indeed. That's it from us on this Monday evening. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Remember, we're taking a break next week, a well-earned break. I have a communion next Saturday, and honestly, you'd think it was another coronation. But that's it from us on this Monday evening. Good luck, good evening, God bless.